To order. See that all the members are here today, which is awesome. And we have moderately full agenda, but we certainly have a lot of people. So we'll kick things off with the consent agenda that we have before us. And anybody have anything to add, change, or make comment on from last time? Nope. Okay, I would entertain a motion.
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
And do we have a second?
I'll second.
All right. A motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. Aye, as well. Moves ahead. All right, the first thing is we have the GES setback variance before us. And I mean, I do have some questions. Did you guys want to say anything right off?
It's a worthy project, and we need your approval.
Okay.
We've talked to the neighbors involved. I talked to Gene Lisinski, and Jerry's talked to Betty. They seem to have no problems, no issues. They're not here first. So.
Yeah. Okay. And did we?
We didn't hear anything.
Yeah, I didn't think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's not a lot of traffic on that road back there, so.
We had one person come in asking about it, I think just pleased that they had received a notice.
Oh.
So they asked about all of the stuff.
Okay.
Oh, here's a neighbor.
And here's the-
One of the neighbors.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm gonna ask her if she wants to say anything.
Oh. And, I'm sorry, did you want to make any comments? No? Okay, great. Yeah. So, one question I did have just to know, you know, looking at where it's located and that there seemed like there were other options, why that spot?
Actually, there aren't any other options.
Okay.
As the model shows, we're on a postage stamp property.
Yeah.
This piece here is our anticipated east addition,
Okay,
not in place yet. So we don't want to occupy that spot.
right,
And there is no other place. So there's a hoop house here now that'll be replaced with the accessory building, we're calling it, 22 by 44.
Yeah, 22 by 44.
Just a modest building. And, you know, we're suffering from success. The school's been growing,
right,
busting all the seams. We had planned an addition up in this corner. It just, all the delays just pushed it back, and it wasn't gonna happen this year, and wasn't gonna solve the problem, so it's like, what the heck are we gonna do? So, jumped into this. They'll give us one classroom
okay,
that we can convert when we get the new addition done into an accessory building for storage and growing plants and things that the kids do.
okay.
We're losing that east parking lot because of the safe routes to
Yeah.
school,
Mhm.
in which there isn't much land left there anyway after that's gone. And so right now, if you drive by, we're actually changing our north parking lot to accommodate almost doubling the capacity of the cars in it to try and overcome some of our losses here.
Okay,
And, yeah, it's, unless we start knocking down all the trees up in that corner, and I imagine the kids would be a little upset about that, since
Right.
it's, we gotta give them.
yeah,
a
don't do
couple-
that.
Couple trees from the playground, yeah.
Well, and
Right.
the addition that we're planning on the east there encroaches on some wetlands, which we have an application in for and doing some replacement, but, you know, besides taking down trees, it would impact wetlands and the woods and our timing. Our timing is very critical to get this thing up and in place by school year.
Okay.
It's an aggressive schedule, but we have our best man on it.
Yeah, definitely that. Well, I don't know, maybe.
Maybe,
I
yeah.
have no judgment.
Our only man.
Which is sometimes
the
the
best
best.
we got
The
right now.
best we got, yeah.
All right, do any of our commissioners have any questions for our GES?
I have a quick question. So we've run into the R1 zoning issue before and how it would affect a neighboring commercial property. i.e. that probably the property to the south,
Mhm.
which would be Lashinsky's, and he's aware that he would be losing some of his,
No, he's not going to. So first of all, this isn't, it would be the other way around. If this was a residential use, that would create an issue for him.
okay,
But even at a 50-foot setback, the reason this is considered a front yard is because there's a street right-of-way between the two properties that's 66 feet wide.
okay.
So that street right-of-way is all the buffer that I've ever more ever need. No one will even notice that this building is in a front yard unless we build that street. And that could happen someday because the property that Lashinsky's own and the property that's just west of this is kind of undeveloped still.
Yep.
So we don't really know whether it will be required.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
So that is my major concern.
Mhm.
Why, oh, sorry. Why, I know the west end of Ashland Avenue was vacated. Why, what is the city's plan? Why did Ashland Avenue and this other one to the west of this property not get vacated at the same time? What is city's intentions?
Well, the city doesn't have intentions other than this needs to be available to be used by those adjacent property owners if and when they have intentions. So Ashland Avenue west of what would be Fourth Avenue was vacated, but east of is not vacated. So between what's Fourth Avenue and the Gun Fun Trail, this right-of-way exists. Now,
And
the
that-
block here is starting to be fully developed, but the Lashinsky's property really isn't. And then the block between Fourth and Fifth, if those avenues were in place, that the Husky zone plus what's south of them really isn't fully developed at all, and this road might be required in order to do that. So if somebody wanted to take, say, the Huskies' property, for instance, and subdivide it into single-family homes, they might need this road to serve them.
So that is why I maybe have a concern, is that if we turn this into a road because it's needed to develop it for other purposes, now we have a school building on the property line.
Yeah.
And it's supposed to be 50 feet.
It's supposed to
From
be
the
25 feet.
But
Yeah.
schools and churches from residential, if we were to make over here, it would,
Still 25 feet. So that right-of-way at 66 feet wide takes care of any of those additional buffer requirements.
It would be if you had a property and another property that, and there wasn't a 66-foot right-of-way, like Ashland Avenue is, in between them, right, then you'd have to have that 50-foot, if I understand it right, the 50-foot between the two buildings maybe in the competing zones, right? But because of the 66-foot wide right-of-way, even if they build right on the line, yes, it's right.
it's right
And
on the
that's-
road.
But it's 66 feet then before somebody else, if they came on the south side and asked for a variance to build right on the road on the south side, there still would be 66 feet. And that, so that 50-foot
But we are
moot. But yes, I
putting a
understand-
school
I
building
understand what you're
right
saying.
on the road,
Right.
Right on the
Instead of
right-of-way.
25. Right
So-
on the right-of-way, yeah.
which
The
is a
road,
concern.
you know, this would be a 2-block maximum length road. And I can't imagine that we would build it even 40 feet wide. So there is a boulevard that would still be there, potentially big enough for a sidewalk and a strip of grass. You know, it's not going to be a road like Broadway that gets 50 or 60 feet wide. And it could very well be a 30-foot wide road and have a pretty big boulevard. But the right-of-way is going to be right next to that building, yes.
Was that 4 feet? Yeah. And I think we're not right on the line, we'll be like 4 or 5 feet.
On that line.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Any other commissioner questions, or does Stacy has more?
Well, yeah.
Okay.
I did have concerns with the way this packet was put together and making sure I totally understood everything that was in it. It was rather confusing that the map didn't show the whole plan, but thank you, Jerry, for bringing that down, because we walked through this, because I'm like, well, wait a minute, your map does show other things, places. And we still all see that, yeah, I guess. We like trees, but am I going to have a tree? I'm just questioning. 4 feet from a road, trees. What's the best thing in the long-term future for kids? My second question, I'm really glad to see more people here from the school because Jerry Starr has signed this application, but he is not the owner of this property. And do we have anything from the school saying,
School's not
This
the owner
is-
either.
It's a Great
Foundation.
Expectations Foundation.
Yeah,
And if you need my, and I'm the chairman of that foundation.
yeah.
And if you need my signature, I'm happy to,
I mean, I've been talking to not just Jerry,
yeah.
okay,
so,
but
and that was one of my
this
issues
is
too.
all I was given
Yeah,
to review this and ask questions. I'm like, okay, this doesn't make sense. I don't, and I'd seen another plan in another meeting, so I'm like, okay, wait a
This has
minute.
been This has been a
Doesn't,
project from hell, I gotta tell you that. We're honing in on it. I think we'll get there.
Yeah,
This is absolutely necessary for school operations next year, that's all I can say.
sure. Yeah. I mean, I guess, yeah. I mean, I was just looking at I guess what's missing from here, when I'm looking at that accessory building, is wondering, so where is it now? You don't have it out there, right?
It's the hoop house.
It's where the hoop house
It
is.
would
and-
be, the hoop house is no
Is-
longer in use due to,
Right. But would it be about that side?
it's 4 feet shorter.
Yeah.
And same, very same footprint.
Yeah, and I guess the only question I had, I mean, just trying to think of how it could get within the line, is it could come down this way. What would that be? Coming west? and
it has to
then-
go north to get out of the setback area.
Right, but I'm thinking where those buildings are, if it came further west and then went north, then they'd be beyond the line. If I'm looking at it. If it's coming this way.
West doesn't help, because those other.
This doesn't- this-
units-
well, you can move the shed in the yurt.
Right. And you can move it to that. I mean, I'm just
Here?
wondering, just making sure that we've gone through all the variations that could happen, and I'm sure you have.
We
but-
have, yes.
We're gonna pull up an aerial photo so we can all look at
Yeah.
current conditions. I got it in front of me, so
You can see.
I can see.
Okay.
And there's definitely other places that could go on the property, but not necessarily that work with what their expansion plans are.
One of the things that we are trying to achieve is when this addition is constructed, this will go away. We're gonna lose the playground when this happens. And when these go away, then the children will have this playground again. And that's what we're fighting for, is
I see.
to try and give them back their playground. So
Mhm.
these were both 2 double-wide trailers that were moved in over the last few years. That only shows one of them.
Yep. An older photo.
It shows the hoop house, so you can see the hoop house there.
Yeah, you can't see the other building that's there, which would be the most logical place if you just looked at their site plan. Like, why didn't you just move it straight north? Because there's a building there.
Uh-huh.
And so then you'd have to come west, like you said, into that southwest corner, but you still can't meet the setbacks on the west side
I see.
and the south side and fit this building in there. So then you have to use either somewhere north of the building, which is either right now parking area, which is gonna be enhanced, or woods that have wetlands in them. Or you'd have to put it right where their expansion project's gonna go. Those are really their only decent options.
And it looks like from the map in the packet, that will also require a variance, correct?
No, I don't believe so.
Because it says here, this is the setback line, and then it,
Yeah,
So
that's
it's
that original survey was done when this was zoned R2, and then the setbacks were
Okay.
40 feet. So now
That's
the
why I
current
had
setbacks
a
are
problem with
25.
this map.
It's not a great map, but it is a survey drawing, which helps at least you know where the distance of the property lines are. It's just got some artifacts on it that are data.
Yeah. All right. Anything else?
Well,
We can keep going.
I would just say that in the future, that when we have an application for a variance, we should probably have some sort of resolution from, if it's a nonprofit owning that the board has approved this variance and not just the person who's on the committee.
We actually, yeah, I don't have those minutes with me, but we actually have, because we had to vote as a board to spend the money to build this, so we've done that.
I can
But
understand your concern about that.
that's, I'm talking to Mike Roth,
Yeah.
that should be included. I'm not blaming you.
I mean, I-
I'm saying that
we wouldn't put
would be.
this application, we wouldn't even accept it if that wasn't true.
But you realize my position of
Sure.
trying to make a decision and having all the information I need to make a good decision. That would be something I would need to know. So thank you for letting me know you've got that.
All right. Well, I think that, and looking at the items that we have to consider, it does, I mean, in terms of walking it and having been there, you know, it seems like it is fitting in to where it is. I mean, yes, there is a future that we cannot see that may pose an issue. But I feel like in where our needs are right now, it feels like it's kind of fitting in on all these points. And I think granting this variance is what I would propose that we do, and send it off to the city council.
Are you making a motion?
I'm making that motion.
Seconded.
Motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Yeah.
Okay,
Thank
3
you.
and 1. Very good. Moving on. DDA. Okay. Second time's a charm.
You want me
wanna
to stick
come
around
on
for the
up,
rest of the
or you
meeting, or
want-
do you need a minute?
Yeah,
You're welcome to stick around.
yeah, you're welcome to.
Well, I have an interest in this one, so I'll stick around.
All right, very good.
Rezoning.
Did you want to come up and talk about it, or just have us pepper you with questions, or?
I mean, they sat there, do you want me to come up, or?
Yeah, that'd be great. We do,
Okay.
and the microphone's right there.
And the microphone. Gotcha.
Can't have you hanging back.
I printed it out, but then I didn't grab it from the printer, so this is all I got here, so.
Okay.
Okay, so we are in front of you today, or me as the EDA director, and I believe you have some language that we put together, and I swear this language has bounced off of so many people in so many different areas, and there were changes made, and then kind of it got better and better as we threw it around. And I think that what we have come up with, I know that what we have come up with is something that is in line with the original uses of the business park. It encourages expansion of workforce housing, and it also, appeals to future developers and landowners who can see this as an opportunity, and thus we can sell those sites and create a kind of a community up there. So I kind of wanted to start with two things that this amendment that you see in front of you we want to do is we want property owners to be able to live and work on their property at Cedar Grove Business Park, wherever that property is. And we also want property owners and their businesses to be able to provide housing for their employees at Cedar Grove Business Park. Those are two things those are our goals of it. And there are other things that we have brought up, such as we've heard safety concerns about residences in the business park. And I believe that in the past, we've satisfactorily kind of answered those questions. And I'm sorry, I've never met you before.
Hi.
But in the past, we've given good answers to all of those concerns, and I'd be happy to reiterate any of those solutions as they come up. But also, you know, I think that when the purpose statement of the business park was changed in 2020, it kind of made this ball start rolling towards allowing for this kind of unique style of living and working. And so the new purpose statement, which I don't think you have in there, but I can read: the purpose of the Business Development Area District is to enable the creation or expansion of a variety of businesses that enhance the community through job creation and retention, economic activity, property tax and utility support, and the provision of services valued by the community. The BDA is characterized by a variety of types of small businesses, including live workspace where appropriate, that benefit from the setting separated from established residential and commercial areas. And so this was passed by the City Council in 2020. Many of you are aware of that. And it allowed for more flexibility in kind of filling the business park. And so it also offered that opportunity to create kind of a little community back there of this live-work kind of space. And it's, a lot of people are kind of counting on this amendment to go through as they are making their future plans. Electricians need electricians. They need to build housing for their workers, and they're saying, can I do it here? Not yet. We'd really like to be able to do it here. So when we were in front of you last time, in front of the council last time, one landowner said, I appreciate the foresight of not being stuck in a not working model when we were talking about kind of updating the purpose statement and finding something that works today. That keeps in mind what the original purpose is, but kind of brings us into today in a way that people can afford to create their small businesses. They can live there while they're growing their nest egg. Then when they buy a house, they can have their employees live there when they move out. We've seen it with the veterinarian, and I think that others would like to do it as well. So I thank you for hearing my little spiel right now, and I welcome any comments, and I just so appreciate your time.
Is it still, I know the language has changed, is the idea still that these are going to be, these residential uses are going to be attached and or still on the second floor of the primary commercial structure?
That is still in the language under,
So it just looks like it was changed
Yeah.
on
Yeah,
one.
I don't
looks like
see that.
That was dropped,
It was dropped.
and that was dropped.
Was that intentionally dropped?
I think part of that came from, in our discussions, if there is somebody there, like if Sathry's, for example, wanted to build something for employee housing, they've already got their, they already had something there, they already have something, so if they could fit something still on the property, right?
Additional
We still
single-family
want to,
residence
Like an
type-
ADU
type
or-
structure, though?
well, but it's not, this is an accessory use, it's not the primary use. The primary use of this is for, the primary use, the primary use is of the land is, well, in their, I don't know, I guess in their case, it's, they already applied for their permit and got a building permit, obviously, because they have a business up there. I think, what was the reasoning, just depending on, I remember the meeting that we had with.
I mean, that makes sense to me, because I was wondering why it was dropped, but that's why I thought they would have dropped it. you guys would have dropped it.
Well, we kind of had that
Is so that you
discussion.
can do that, you know, because some, you know, you may want to have the housing, but attaching it to the building that you're using for whatever purpose may not make sense. And having something, as long as you're, you know,
And within
land
the
makes
city's
Yeah.
kind of way of doing things, that's allowed, is to have multiple, you know, buildings on a site. And so, sorry, I didn't realize exactly what you were talking about at first, but remember the conversation now. There's been so many conversations, even over a year or 6 months since last time I was here, about accessory dwelling units and our need to fill all available space with, you know, what we can. So, yeah, that's been removed.
Second question is, the workforce housing and/or the resident itself, they are specifically tied to that business operating on premise, or just any workforce for any business?
The way that this
In
is.
between.
The way that this is written is really unique to our business park, because we have people who own the lot and then they lease it out to the business who is running the business. And so we're looking at a subsidiary or, you know, on down the line. It has to be connected to something of that primary use of the building or a business of that primary use. And so employees, if you have the 2 locations for your business, one of them's in Cedar Grove Business Park, one of them's in Tofty, and you want your employees to live at Cedar Grove Business Park with the rest of the crew because you haven't built anything in Tofty yet, we want to be able to allow something like that.
But it has to be it's not, you couldn't, if you, the veterinarian couldn't rent to somebody that works at Spencer's.
Unless the veterinarian owns part of Spencer's.
If I was a
Then they
resort
could. Then
owner
they
of the
could.
trail and I wanted to start a small storage facility and then create a bunch of row houses for my resort staff?
Potentially, yeah. So then the trick here is we don't do a very good job defining what we mean by accessory. And that's where it's still open to some interpretation.
Yeah.
So if it was 100 square foot storage facility and 15 apartments, that doesn't look very accessory.
And it
But-
has to
I
be
agree.
approved.
That's the obvious not, right? And you can make an obvious is, but there's a whole lot of space in between where there's no guidance other than, I guess, what do we think in the office right now? And we could define it, you know, we did that with residential uses. We said it's based on square footage and there's a maximum. Like, so it has to be smaller than the house to be accessory, and it can't be more than 1,000 square feet, and it can't be more than 20 feet. So we did add those details in on the residential side. On this one, if we care about that, that would be the way to do it, is to add some more definition around what we mean by accessory.
Because I think, go ahead.
No, I'm
I
sorry.
was just
Go
gonna
ahead.
say, I
No.
think that was part of the conversation that after this came through here last time and got
Yeah.
to the council, is that some of the things that we were hearing was like, wait, something similar to the extent of like, somebody might have a shop, and then there's space above with apartments, but there's no real tie between those two things, and like, is your shop a business? Like, we needed to make sure that there was clarification in that language that, you know, that there is some sort of connection, but I agree, I mean, this was kind of the work that I tried to take the feedback from the council to at least
Yeah.
get it through the EDA side, and I
Mhm.
think if there's anything language-wise that we think is worthwhile, I mean, I think, to Mike's point about the residential ADU, the first one that we had, maybe it's not the first one, but one of the first ones that
First
we
one they
had
had to
come
ask,
through,
yeah.
we had to get a variance when Ian came in, right, or not Ian, but Lori.
Yeah.
So, you know, which again, of course, you think of, it made sense, and we have the opportunity then as this board for these things coming through, right, every time? We
No,
have to look
not
at
at
it?
all. No,
Not as
this
long
is-
as they meet this?
If they meet this,
So that's where you're saying it's in the office to whether you guys decide that seems like a lot of,
if that's what you want us to do, we're fine doing it. And I actually don't necessarily think it's a problem to have a small storage space and 15 apartments. I think you can make an argument that providing housing for employees is a key business need. And so if that business is doing it for their own employees, that's accessory to something. And it, you know, if you don't like that, it might turn out that way, then there's tools you can use to put limits on it. But if you, it doesn't necessarily have to be a problem either.
Okay, so certainly want to have, we know we need housing, we know we need workforce housing. And I have no problem with the owner occupied part of the, but I rode around today and I think there's places where, yeah, I could see where workforce housing might work, and I can see places where that probably not a good idea. So why can't we just say leave it there, and then that any ADU additional rental workforce housing is a conditional use permit? It comes back and we decide, you know what, it does fit there. Yep, you get that. Or you know what, you're right next to a lot that somebody purchased a while ago, and yeah, it's probably not the best place for people who are trying to live and sleep and work, because it's a noisy place. It can be a noisy place, and the intention of this, setting aside this land, was for business. And I get businesses need employees. But I think if we just try to make it blanket and, well, yeah, you get to have a storage unit with a 20 apartment building, well, I don't know that that in itself is appropriate. So can you explain why not using a conditional use or variance for the additional structures is not applicable here?
If I can piggyback off of your idea a little bit, I mean, we're also doing a lot of work with the commercial industrial zone and allowing a lot of those similar uses to exist in that zone now. We know that that's exciting because all of the lots are now for sale, right? And starting to get traction. These are artificially deflated prices in the business park, and it provides an unfair market for these people that are wanting to sell their lots and do something similar. If that's all it takes is to put up a warehouse and then have 15 rental units. So I would like to see more definition of what accessory structure looks like as it relates to that business.
What about quantity? I mean, could you do that? Like, could there be a maximum per lot of a certain number? I mean,
Yeah,
did you get any feedback on that, Beth? I mean, I didn't hear anything about that, but I don't think the numbers that we kept hearing were 2 or 3, you know, I don't think I ever heard like 15, but again, if that's not written in there that you can't do 15.
Right.
These are gonna be
Then-
self-limiting, and these are pretty small lots,
Yeah.
complicated by wetlands on each one of them.
I don't think they're that small.
I don't think they're that
I
small.
think
for-
they're pretty big.
Well, but by the time you impose the wetlands over it and where you can build, the buildable area gets to be pretty small, so I think you're.
Just pick up the Grand Marais condominiums and stick it on any one of these lots, and you could do it 6 times.
Okay, right?
You know, in wanting to allow something and not prohibit something,
Right.
there, I think we're trying to find some kind of a middle ground in allowing it, but also, if somebody's trying to put up that much housing, do we need that much housing, workforce housing? Like, you know, like, would that be a good thing to make that much housing? And being able to subdivide it, divide it out from people who just, you know, want to make a vacation rental out of that storage area or something like that and turn it for a profit. And that's not, well, they might be getting a profit, but we don't want the vacation rental part in there. And then you have the chance to say no in that, in the permitting, right? Like, in the land use permit, you can say no for that
Do you think
Sure.
putting
without extra language.
Do you think putting a condition, just making it a
Making them all conditional
making
use.
it conditional use would prohibit, or would, not prohibit, would it,
Just-
like, make it less saleable? You know what I
Is it
mean?
a
It
chilling
depends on
effect on
Chilling
it?
effect on it,
Sure, but anybody that's serious about their business is not gonna be held up by that.
yeah.
They're gonna ask if they need it,
Jason?
just because it's, geez, yeah.
I was just thinking about ways to, maybe one thing you could do to try to solve the issue here is to say that at least 50% of new employee housing has to be, the employees have to be working on site. So in other words, you can't build a 20 by 25 foot storage unit because they're not actually working at the physical site, because they're not doing anything. Now, if you, whatever number, I made 50% up, but you could set a threshold of saying, like, the intent here is to be employee housing for the business that's in the business park. And it might be the case that that business has 2 locations, fine, but at least half of them have to be working there in order to justify the housing being built there.
This is gonna get a lot trickier than that, unfortunately. If
Yeah,
Nordic
well,
Electric
enforcement's a
wants to
problem.
put their electricians up there, they don't work on site.
Or,
So-
okay, not work on site, but like out of that office or something, that's what I mean.
But then a 20 by 25 foot building might suffice.
Sure.
I
but
mean,
as
we've
long
got
as-
Hunt Electric's buildings about 20 by 25. So now you could have Hunt Electric's building in the business park and 3 apartments for electricians. Now, I'm not trying to make the case that that's bad. That might be terrific. I think that might be great. But
Perfect.
this language
Yes.
would potentially allow that.
But it might be perfect or it might not be perfect. And that's why I will go back to advocating for a conditional use, so that we can make sure whatever plan that owner is presenting is a good plan that fits for that area. And I don't think that's a huge step to put in.
I mean, I wouldn't have, the EDA doesn't really have anything to say about, I mean, I would love to be able to move it forward with that option with a conditional use permit. But it's in the hands of the city right at that point, and so,
It's a simple change.
Is it administrative that would complicate it? Is it, you know, I think it would be, you just say yes or no.
Well, the administrative is easy, right? And if you don't put any guidelines in there, then it's really easy. If you want it to be a conditional use permit, then you're gonna have to each case decide what the guidelines are. And there may be that kind of unique situational issue each time, but there also might just be some general guidelines you can provide as to what you mean by accessory. And that's what Jason was trying to get at. Can we at least give people an idea of what we mean? Is it the square footage? Is it the number of units? Are they working on site or off site? What's the issue that we care about? And why? Would be nice to be that be the conversation.
Because there are things in the covenants, now that I'm remembering, that give us, you know, they want trees to stay there. We want the scenic beauty to exist as it is and all that. And so it wouldn't be in the spirit of anything to cut down the whole lot and to develop so many. So there are some things in there that can protect it already from that kind of overdevelopment.
What do you guys think about?
I'd be happy to write, you know, as
I mean, if
for
if
the
we're
council, I
going
could write something.
I'm confused why,
to go with the conditional use, I would think, you know, we do have to give them something to shoot at, you know, if we're gonna do that. I'm not necessarily saying we should, but that would be a way for this to go forward and still have some
I mean,
breaking power.
did the existing language just not provide enough options for housing? Is that why it's being changed?
Yeah, that was not a thing.
The existing language called out a certain number of blocks. It was like 6 lots.
For lots 3 through 8, block 5 is the opener in the existing
Yeah.
language.
Right, block
Okay.
5. And it also only said owner occupied, which could be an issue if somebody did that scenario where they built their business and now they want to build their house somewhere else,
Yeah.
and then they couldn't have anybody live in the domicile unless they sold their business, and so that's where that workforce rental housing work comes in.
Yeah. That is tricky.
What is the language for it? You know, it's hard to just, nail it down, yeah, while leaving it open enough. But I'd be happy to draft up the language for the.
But can't we, so what we currently have, what is currently our rules, we could take out 4 lots 3 through 8, block 5. We could say owner occupied residents are permitted as accessory uses, leave it there.
And rental workforce.
Then,
As long as
under
it's-
that,
yeah.
no, just owner occupied, hey, that's, you get to do that. Second story attached, you get to do that. But then we could say rental workforce housing units are a conditional use permit, require a conditional use permit. There we go.
But then
That solve that?
it does, but I think we want to come up with some standards too.
I think a lot of the language that we have in the new language is getting us in the right direction for what we want. I really think it either comes down to count or size or those kind of sticky points. You know, like putting some limiting factor, like still like, you know, so that if they come in, they can come in with a plan of like, oh yeah, well, I can't do a conditional use permit for 15 units because they're, you know, allowed under a conditional use permit are a maximum of whatever we say. And, you know, but the rest of this language, I think, actually is still good. I agree with what you're saying. Like, I like that idea of owner occupied. Great. Let's just do that through the whole spot, the whole place. And then the next step is if you know, want to, I mean, I guess, so then the question becomes, in the case of like the vet clinic, right? So, under what you're saying, I'm just thinking it through. Under what you're saying, they didn't have to do anything except for come in, get the permit, they can build their project. Now, their business worked, which is what we wanted. And now they can go buy a house, right? So then, I guess that they can just, what do they do they can just let people, employees rent there? Because
Under
it's
a
only-
conditional, yeah.
But I
'cause
mean,
it's a-
why would they have to come in if they're not
Yeah, I
changing
see what you're
anything?
getting at,
If
but-
they're not changing
Mm-hmm.
anything
Uh-huh.
to the building, right? They're simply moving out of the upstairs and now letting an employee there, like how,
That may be a different liability with that kind of
And
person.
maybe that's what we go for, is saying like, you know, maybe kind of bring these two together is like a unit you can have without needing to go through any rigmarole. You know?
greater than a single,
Yeah, like if it's just you, you know, great, or if it's just one employee, great. But then if you're going beyond that, then.
yeah, because then that lets that natural progression of what we're intending to not
Yeah,
have to
so then we
choose
don't
it.
have to like get in their business
Yeah.
and they don't have to come talk to us.
But if, yeah.
How many
but-
units are in the old funeral home, though?
I don't know how many units are in the.
Yes.
No idea.
Right.
And, you know, one single-family unit can put a lot of employees in it if you're creative. So, and we're not gonna know anything about it.
Right.
So if that's an issue you care about, and you don't have to, right? I mean, if there's other controls on it, employees
Yeah.
are only gonna accept housing that works for them too.
Yeah.
But if you care about the number, then we should put a number in the ordinance.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, so that points towards the square footage and it gets a little mucky there.
You can also just say, if you want, you know, like you said, owner occupied is good. If you want to do something other, you need a conditional use permit. And here are the things we're gonna use to evaluate it. You don't even have to set the square footage limit. You can just say, the area that's designated to residence versus business, the number of employees
And that can
that
come.
work on site versus work off site,
Mhm.
the amount of, you know, impact on the neighboring property. You can just make that list of what are the things you care about. And we then have given people what to aim at, like you said, but
Yeah.
without being too prescriptive, so that you still feel like you've got some ability to
To get people.
make
there.
judgments about it.
Yeah, we're
It's
not gonna be
growing.
hard and fast, and then we're basically just having to issue variances for the language that we just wrote.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
I think, I like that idea.
Yeah.
It seems like it, I mean, it's pro what we're trying to do, which is, right,
Yeah.
get people,
Get the residents, get the business.
get
Yeah.
private entities to create housing opportunities, so.
Well, did my quick off-the-cuff short list hit all the issues, or are there other issues?
I like your issues.
Okay.
Okay.
Jason's got a question.
Oh,
Well, there might, Mike, just to speak to your question, I think there might be one that you might want to add to the list, short list of issues. It's just site layout and buffering. Because I can imagine a time where, let's just make up North, I think North Electric's there, right? Or they
Yeah.
live in they own a shop, they build some play housing that is whatever the, board ends up deciding is an appropriate size and number. But it's, located such that it's right close to the building operations, so it's very clear that it's only gonna be employees, because the average person wouldn't want to live next to that shop. Well, they decide to sell, the building goes away, and then you've got a weird situation with some, so you're just gonna wanna have some say over the orientation of those structures and how they are buffered from maybe primary use, so that if, in the event that those have to be rented by not workforce at some point, that it makes sense to be able to do that.
and do we have an issue with that? That's another question.
Well, that's a good
Well,
question.
the covenants of the business park really are pretty explicit in a lot of the buffer lines and everything, not for residences, of course, but, and it's just a weird kind of area where there's a lot of wetlands, and some of it is not mitigated, and there are 50-foot buffers through there that we're dealing with too. So those are just natural impedances that to development and things that we have to deal with there that just make it hard.
And they don't have to, when you sell the business or the business expands and you move away, that doesn't mean that has to be used as residential anymore. You might expand your business into that space. Somebody that's gonna buy that piece of property that's got an electrician's shop and 3 apartments might decide those 3 apartments are not gonna be apartments, they're gonna be offices or more storage or something else. They'll have some different vision. Or if it works for them, it works for them.
And there's already in the covenants there language that will make sure that that is going to continue, like they're not going to buy the business and turn that into rentals. I mean, we've got that language down, both here and I assume in your covenants
Yeah,
as
they
well.
can't
Primary.
subdivide it, they can't sublease, they can't
Okay.
homestead, they can't
Okay.
do anything like that.
I don't know, did Jason's idea jump to any of you guys as another concern that we would like to have addressed? I guess I don't pick that one up, but if you guys are of the mind.
Sorry, I wanted to clarify.
Yeah.
I noticed, I think I was misrepresenting what I was trying to say. That it seems like there are 2 different pockets that are of critical concern. But there's the owner occupied, which you could change to just employee occupied, because it doesn't have to be the owner, it could be the manager of the business or whatever.
Right.
That covers the rental challenge, so as long as an employee's occupying a space, you don't care who it is. But that seems different if it's attached or above, as opposed to discrete accessory units that are like strictly residential in nature. So if you put 4 modular units that are, in the back of the property, that's a different thing than having a, mother-in-law suite, so to speak, above a garage or something like that. So I'm just saying, you'll probably want to have some ability to review in the conditional use permit, if there's accessory dwelling units that are outside of the primary use, physically outside of it, you're probably gonna wanna be able to look at that and see that it makes sense in context of the business park. That's what I was trying to get at.
Okay. Yeah, I think that language did not make it into the new one.
Well, you're not saying no to detached units with this language. You're allowing that as an option.
Yeah.
When it's a conditional use, you're not limiting yourself to whatever we put on this list. Where you get the particular conditional use questions as well, which talk about not necessarily internal orientation, but certainly external orientation, impact on the neighborhood, if you decide the layout of those units impacts the neighborhood in a way that's not appropriate, you can always use that as a finding in a conditional use, if that's the road we're going down.
Okay.
I'm having a hard time picturing how that would play out, but, you know, that's why you're making people ask the questions, so you get to look at it.
Yeah. I like that. Do we need to, who will produce this language? Will this go to you? Will this go back to you? Not sure the
Mike and I have
process.
been working together a
Okay.
bit. I could draft and then he could chop. You're good at chopping.
Oh, I don't think this is hard to write. We can do it right now.
Conditional,
We can do it
I-
right now and then move it to the council.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
we can do that. Not-
Great. That's fantastic.
Brandon, do you have anything? Thoughts?
Being the new guy, might put my foot in my mouth, but we'll see. I'm not sure having it be conditional use is in any way necessary. I feel like the nature of the lots is going to determine what people build and how. So I think the only real condition we should put is that it has to be rented to employees. Anything beyond that, we get into a big enforcement problem. On-site, off-site. Well, how do you even, you're going to follow people around and figure out where they work? I feel like you have a weird enforcement issue the more rules and stipulations you start putting on it. Also, I'm not sure why we, who aren't in the park, who aren't going to be living there, should be imposing our personal preferences onto how people orient their buildings. That doesn't seem conducive to the flourishing of the area. Also, he touched on, okay, well, you build a house because the owner lives there initially and then he leaves and, an employee moves in. Well, that could be several employees. We won't know. And if we put some sort of limit as to, oh, well, only one employee can live here, you're going to start having business owners finding ways around that and creating suboptimal living conditions for the employees. And so if we don't have those stipulations in the first place, they might just throw up the row houses to begin with, and then the employees all have separate spaces, and it's much better. I feel like the more we meddle at it, it's actually going to create just problems, personally.
Yeah. I think we are trying to make it as smooth and clear for the people who would like to, add a dwelling. And we're just saying like, yep, you alone, or you and, we've said manager or whatever. Great. And we want to make sure that is a for sure. And then we're just saying like, yeah, and anything more we would like to
Let
have.
us take a look.
Yeah. And I think it just leaves the flexibility for both them and us. Like, they can be creative, and we can be creative, and we can figure out, like, okay, is this gonna work or not? Because, we can't really, we have a hard time predicting the future. And so we don't know who's gonna move next door, we don't know what their structures are gonna look like, and we can't really say that. But we can say that we do wanna support, businesses coming in and starting and people being able to live there and that kind of thing, so.
But I do agree largely with what you say. I think in this particular area, though, I think we do have a little bit more at stake, and want a little bit more involvement in how that plays out.
Yeah. They are getting a great benefit too. This is.
Oh, absolutely. It's going to relieve a lot of pressure on single-family housing in the area, and because some places are, the employees already live here, but if they have a better deal working, living on site, that's going to free up housing for people who specifically want single-family. Also, I can attest personally, the closer you live to work, the better. It's an enormous benefit to just be able to walk 5 minutes to work.
Yeah, although I find
and
it an
creating-
enormous benefit to walk 5 blocks away from work too. It's pretty nice.
I just had a conversation with a business owner, and we both agreed, owners should not live at their work.
They're already gonna be there anyway, so.
And if you want to draw that line, the conditional use, not conditional use, I'd stick with owner.
Yeah,
When you start talking manager, I don't know what that means. And I could, I mean,
okay. That feels fair.
every bank I have friends work at, they're all vice presidents, right? So which one's a manager? I don't know. Do we
Mhm.
care? I mean, if it's not the owner, we better not care because we're not going to know.
Yeah, okay, I feel like that's fair. Do we need to make a motion for that? Is that something you can craft and bring to the council?
Well, you're going to need to make a motion. So if you're comfortable making a motion, we'll amend what you have in front of you to keep an owner-occupied residence can be located. And now, do you want it to be second story or attached, or do you not care about that? That's the
Second
existing
story
language. I got
attached.
2 heads nodding, but I don't know. What about the other 3?
I guess I didn't originally, but now I want to double think.
Because I want to remind us that this is a business park. That is the primary use. And down the road, your business grows, yes, we can on a case-by-case basis decide employee housing. But it's easier for an owner of a business to not complain about the next guy's business.
Yeah.
When you have employees and no owner on site, they're gonna complain about that next guy's business making noise.
Right. They might generate some complaints themselves, too.
Right. So that's why I feel comfortable with an owner living there for right now.
Well,
No, at that part,
But is it
we're
attached?
attaching the attached part.
does it have
Yes.
to be attached, or does it have
Yes.
to be?
In my opinion, because guess what? I don't want you to have your business and then build what I call the McMansion, because you can. Because there's some beautiful lake views up there, and I can see that happening. It's a business park.
Well, that's simple. We keep the existing language in one, just like you started with, Stacy. And then we add 2 as a conditional use.
Yep.
And then we'll add a statement at the end of that that says conditional use permits will be evaluated based on the ratio of commercial versus residential space, the number of employees working on site versus off site, the impact on the site, something like that.
Mhm. I'm okay with that.
And then the rest of the language that they suggested stays in here.
And re-add the attachment part.
We're gonna add, number 1's gonna stay on the list. We're gonna have to figure out the right way to say number 2 is conditional use, number 1 is not. But as long as all those words are in there, the policy is what you're voting on.
Great. All right,
I make a motion.
yeah, I'll second that.
Said language.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Hi.
There we go.
Which?
Thanks, Beth.
Council next week?
Next week.
Next week?
Next week, already? All right. And now we have more fun and mixed-use zone. And it's Jeff.
Just here, but he's just gonna be here if you need him.
Oh, okay,
Because really, this isn't
yeah.
a lot different than the last 2 times you've looked at it.
Yep.
So this is the public hearing. We've sent out notice really twice now, once that we're having a conversation, and then the second one where we're having a public hearing and inviting comment. We've had a lot of questions in the office, but we haven't received any comments in the office yet.
Oh, okay. All right. And do we have people here who would like to make comment?
This on the,
Yes.
the only thing I.
Can you come forward and?
Sure. We're on that big chunk up there. The only question I have is that, multifamily, when you say multifamily,
Mhm.
is that at the exclusion of single-family homes on that property?
that's the preference. I think there is,
Yeah, I don't care for that.
you can have a single family as a, what was it, it's a conditional use, I think, or,
When I got on the council years and years ago, they had a line running right down the middle of that thing, and the back part was residential and the front part was.
I think that's still the case.
Is it?
Yeah.
Well, I'm just saying, I think it's a shame to eliminate, take out single-family homes down there. If somebody wants to do a nice little development back there,
okay.
or any, well, in my view, anywhere on the property, you do single family instead of multifamily.
So they
There's
are.
quite a bit of land there for all
Yeah.
kinds of housing.
So they are, you can put them there, but they're just a conditional use, so it wouldn't be the primary, so.
So
Or it wouldn't be the
if somebody
permanent.
wanted to come in there and buy that whole thing and make a nice layout of roads going around there and lots, and make a nice little residential thing, that would all have to be conditional use.
Or rezoning,
Yeah.
probably a subdivision too. But there's a path for it, sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the main thing. I think it's a shame to make it a big problem to do that.
Right.
If somebody wants to invest in something like that, I would think that would be
Yeah.
a good thing for the town.
Yeah, no, we would be down with that, and, I mean, what we're trying to do here, though, is we're trying to look at the best use for getting the most people housed, and that's why we're looking at these larger, and we're just saying, like, here's what, this is what we're kind of putting out there as something we would like to see, but we don't get to control what people actually do. We're just saying, like, it'd be great if somebody would put in, some, like, an apartment building or something there, that'd be great, we'd love it.
Yeah.
But they may never do it, but
They
at
may
least
never do
we've
it.
put it out
And
there,
not
like, this
necessarily
is.
there is in yours,
Right,
there is in the CI zone, right?
Yeah.
Looking at how the usage is.
Well,
that-
which we're in,
Right,
yeah.
right, but, and if you look at, yes, I agree with that, but it's also if you look at,
I mean,
what
I
the
have,
footprint
I
of
have no
those-
problem
Yeah.
with what you're talking about multifamily at all. I just
Yeah.
think it would be really not prudent to make it a hardship or a hard thing to do to put single-family homes in there. If a big developer came in and wanted to put a whole bunch, I mean, what's the lot size now? 75?
5,000, that's 40.
5,000
It's a lot
5,000
smaller,
square
right?
feet.
Yeah.
So there could be a whole bunch, or there could be, if you want to make them some upscale and some
Yeah.
regular,
Yeah.
that's the thing I'm saying.
And
yeah,
I think, based on how that's broken, I think the process on that is gonna, because there's gonna be infrastructure, there's gonna be roads, there's gonna be, all of that is
Right.
kind of already so involved with stuff here at the council, right? It's not, I don't, short of, well, yeah, I don't know, it seems like there's a lot of stuff that would have to happen, so if
Yeah.
somebody said, like, we wanna do this in a single family, I think
Yeah.
the city's gonna be involved with it anyways, and it
Yeah.
wouldn't be like, well, no. I don't think, you know what I mean, I think if somebody had
yeah,
wanted to pursue that once they see that, I think part of the property there, the topography is interesting too, and which probably does suit better, what you're saying. Not that there isn't sections
Well,
that
that's
are
so
big and
big,
flat. Yeah,
it's
it
so
is, it's
big,
huge, yeah.
it's so large that,
Yeah.
it can accommodate both, I would think,
oh, yeah.
fairly easy,
I can see
A
both.
developer that had an idea about what they wanted to do there, with $200 in 6 to 8 weeks, can figure out whether you're okay with it or not.
Right.
Yeah,
A rezoning request or a conditional use permit, depending upon what they want to do. There's
Mhm.
definitely a pathway for them to do creative things there.
Okay,
yeah,
okay, that's my main issue.
yeah.
Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Thanks for coming.
All right, Tim. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see you, Jason, you're behind.
Well, it's interesting, sitting through the last conversation, hearing all the reflections on possibilities of how you might resolve you know, how to accomplish something that you seem to be pretty intent on trying to do. I remember going back with the, you know, residential zone district standards and all the conversations that we had over multiple meetings. And I mean, to me, this proposal in the CI district is pretty straightforward, pretty simple, and I do support it. I mean, I'll have to tell you that, you know, I'm a partner in the real estate group that bought the parcel just to the east of Harbor Light. And one of our intentions is to construct an apartment building on that property with also commercial building. I mean, there's a lot of room up there to do stuff. And I mean, I think just the conversations that have been going on about trying to address issues of making housing easier to do in the city are really important, because I mean, I've lived here for 45 years. Housing issues were an issue 45 years ago, and they've only increased in magnitude, you know, during that time. And we all know the challenges. I mean, we've all got our own stories about, you know, what it took to get where we are, and it wasn't an easy pathway for most of us. So I think to be able to open up some of the doors that have been closed is a good step. I support the effort to allow multiple use dwellings, apartment buildings, townhouses, that type in the CI district. Well, I guess it's going to be called something else now. But
Change it to highway mixed use.
I'll never know what we're talking about. So, just with that, thanks for the opportunity to, you know, be here and hear, you know, all the conversations that are going on. I think you're on the right track. Thanks.
Great.
Thanks, Tim.
Thank you, Tim.
And you'll catch on to the name, Sam. It used to be C2, remember?
Howard was asking
So
me
many.
about one of the district names. I said, I think that's downtown waterfront.
It's been too long since you sat up here, obviously.
Not too long.
That was about right.
I remember a few things and I forgot a few things, so.
All right, great. Did you commissioners have any further comments? And there were some.
Are you
Oh, I'm sorry,
waiting?
Jason.
No, it's okay. You basically said what I was gonna say, but I'll be really quick about it.
All right.
I just want to thank the board for thinking through this thoroughly, and Jeff, thanks for your help and walking the board through this too. As you know, I'm pretty biased and have a vested interest in trying to help housing happen in Cook County, and it's things like this that really help me set the table when I'm talking with developers. I think the CI district, the future HMU or whatever you're going to call it, is a very intuitive place to look at multifamily with access to the highway, with utility infrastructure already in place, with the bike path that gets Yami. I think it makes a lot of sense in a lot of locations to at least allow it as something that the city will consider. So I just want to commend you on your work on this and helping make my job a little easier, because I can tell you it's not. So all these little things that seem little from a zoning perspective actually make a big difference when we're working on getting housing built in the community. So thanks, and keep it up.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Anybody else? Okay. So, anything that jumped out to you guys that you thought like, what did we say there? Go ahead.
Yeah, and I missed the discussion last month, so
Right.
Didn't watch it all online, sorry.
Yeah, it was
But
riveting.
I am excited we're here. I am excited we're, trying to get higher density residential uses. I
But-
am concerned, my concern is that we're gonna get 10, 11, and 12, and 13 down here. And they all become vacation rentals, because we don't have a clause in here that says, like, even 50% of the units cannot be vacation rentals.
Natural concern. Keep in mind, it's perfectly legal for somebody to build that right now.
I know, and that's what I'm bringing it up again, that's my concern. That if you do build an apartment building,
But
It really is a hotel.
It's a hotel, which is allowed in the zone right now.
But then call it a hotel, because that's the part that is dividing our community, is that we say, oh, here's apartments, and then they don't really aren't long-term apartments.
Right.
Um,
Oh, I share that concern. Sure.
Yeah, there's no bait and switch here. This is already allowed, right? You're not giving someone an opportunity they didn't already have. And nobody's been building vacation rental apartments in this zone, even though it's been perfectly legal.
Well, we've had single-family homes turn to a
Quite a few.
vacation rentals in this area.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, maybe not quite a few. Some. There's actually still quite a few single-family residences, as we saw, that are being used as residences in this area, which is surprising. Because this is one of the zones where you don't even have to ask for special permission to do lodging. It's just allowed as a primary use. I think to put limits on that is a more difficult conversation because it's already allowed. And when we put this language in front of people, one of the questions we have to ask when we're considering rezoning is it a downzoning? And when we're changing this language, it's rezoning. And if we're going to take that ability to do lodging away, I think it's pretty clearly a downzoning conversation.
Yeah.
I agree with what you say, but I also feel like we have this broad, or this narrow band of places where it's allowed to happen, and over time, those areas have developed into being used as nightly rentals. But we still have the R1, and we still have opportunities in the R1. I mean, I think it's true what Mike says, that has been there, it's been allowed, and there hasn't been a flourishing of it, right? I think that we have, yeah, I mean, I know what you're saying, but I also think that if you, yeah, I guess if you own property there, you had a place there, I mean, I guess that's where I'd rather see it, you know, honestly. If it's gonna happen, that's where I'd rather see it, in the areas that we already allow it at. I mean, it was 7 years ago that we redefined the not being able to do it in R1, and I feel
Yeah.
like short of a few kind of under the radar things happening here and there, I think it's been successful, especially when you look at housing counts in town versus housing counts for cabins outside in the county, and what's kind of proliferated outside of, right? So I don't think anything that we're gonna do in changing this, which, you know, if a handful more of the single families that are there, or you know, a few places get built, but we also do get, you know, apartments we have, you know, that get built and they actually get used, like, is that worthwhile? Like, no, I think so. I don't necessarily feel right going, you know, to now tell somebody that they can't do something. Like, the idea and what I got out of all this and all this conversation is really, it's like, no, we want more use and development in this zone, in this district. And,
And I agree. I mean, I think we're trying to, you know, guide it. I share your concern, but I also would, I'm not, you know, I wouldn't feel right now to sort of pull that away from somebody who's, you know, it's like they had it and then I'm going to take that away. I'm not sure I'm in that I wouldn't feel right about that.
And that's what, I guess that's why I was like, okay, we're now saying cottage, courtyard, attached row house, townhouse, small apartment. Those are new things we're adding to this. I'm not saying change the other things, but on those new things, we're saying, yeah, you get to do that, and I get it. Vacation rentals help pay the bills. So I'm not saying none,
gotcha.
but
Okay.
maybe a percentage of
Gotcha.
those
You know,
have
that-
to be
That
none.
doesn't seem unfair.
In the late 90s, there was a kind of cottage courtyard development in this zone. The on the west side of town, on the south side of the road. There's a few of those units left. A few of them moved to the east side of town. They're still being used as housing. They were originally given permission to be short-term use, and they transitioned into long-term use, and they haven't transitioned back. It's kind of a strange thing that's happened, but basically they built the cottage courtyard development, and it's remained residential use for 25 years.
Yeah, I know. Maybe I'm just
No.
worrying about nothing, but
It's not nothing, it's just not necessarily something that's easy for us to control, and trying to control it might cause more harm than good in this case.
What do you think, Ben?
Yeah, I think that, this is, again, it's giving another option for that use. We're not interested in controlling, maybe we are, but we can't, but it's just one more option. We still have a lot of work to do with R1. Like, we still have a lot, in my estimation.
For building out, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like this creates an option for rental, apartment, or otherwise row house that people will grow out of as fast as they get into them, right? Do we want to keep them here? We need single-family homes to be more of an option. So I don't think this does all that, but it at least maybe provides some opportunities that didn't otherwise exist.
What do you think, Brandon?
Well, I think any expansion of land use is good at this point. I get the concern about them being used as rentals. I myself, as a young newlywed who's trying desperately to stay in town, I too have a vested interest in making sure that housing becomes more available. But at the same time, I get that over-regulating it can cause just as many issues in terms of driving away potential development that may eventually be able to transition into long-term in the long run, with the initial enticement of the sort of quick short-term profits. So yeah, it's tough, and it's difficult to know which way to go in terms of that. But obviously, the intention, as I see it, is that it's going to open up opportunities that are going to benefit the whole town in the long run, regardless. So I'm in support of it as it is. If we want to add in single family residences, I would not be opposed to that at all. But if it's, if people feel that it's not yet time to add that in for whatever reason, I'm open to hearing that out.
Yeah, and I think at least as far as the single family goes, I think we're just, again, we're sort of like, sweetening the pot for something a little bit bigger. But we're not saying you can't do that.
Right.
Anybody who would want to be doing something with that would, they
Mhm.
can do it.
Right.
It's just one more step, which would be a big hard step.
No, not at all.
All right, any other comments?
I just have one, and this is going back to Jeff, and I think we did have this discussion when we were talking about another district, but when we're talking a large apartment dwelling and our height limit is still 35, is that
That
an
was-
issue?
Not in this zone, it's not, it's 35.
35.
Okay.
I travel now, and everything I do, I go look at apartment buildings, and I'm like, well, that one's higher
Yeah.
than 35, that one's higher than 35, so,
Well, a large
I'm just
apartment
saying, I
in
don't
our
know.
zoning means 10 units.
Okay.
That's not a large apartment.
well, I've been looking at large ones and thinking, that's
Yeah.
not gonna work, that's not gonna work.
Go back to the Grand Marais condos again for the second time tonight.
Okay.
That wall on the south side has got to be 50 feet tall, and yet it meets our height definition of 35 because of the topography and because of the sloped roof. So you can put a 3-story building in a
Okay.
35-foot footprint if you're creative about it. And you don't need a 3-story building to put 10 units in.
Right.
All right. I just needed to be reassured of that again, sorry.
So there's all this stuff that's somewhat new to the conversation at the end of the language with the table. And a lot of this is just cleanup, like we're taking out the residential uses that we've already moved to a different table. And that's just, seems like unfinished business from the last ordinance. But I just want to point out one of the changes that we've talked about, and I want to make sure it's clear. At the very end of this language, I mean, I can't even read what the symbol is, but the third from the bottom is scratched out, right? This is the one that said, all non-residential use shall be a minimum of 50 feet from any abutting residential.
Yeah.
That is going to be gone. So that's one of the policy questions that was the part of the origin of this conversation. And at the end, it's going away. So just to be clear, that's what we're proposing here. And if you approve this as is, that's what's going to happen.
Well, I would move to approve this language and send it forward to the city council.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, Jeff.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thanks a lot, Jeff.
Thanks.
All right. So no more business. I would say we are adjourned.